Who is John Taffer really? What does his wife do? What does he own? How did he claw his way to the top of the nightlife industry? And who did he have to destroy to get there? John Taffer is world famous for turning dives into diamonds on his esteemed TV show Bar Rescue. But his TV cred is based on his standing as a titan of nightlife, a title that didn't come easy. John has made some enemies on the road to the top, and today, his dark secrets are finally coming to light. From raunchy contests to brutal backstabbings, today's show is all about John Taffer after dark. We're gonna find out everything they don't want you to know about the Baron of Bars himself. Before we get the first round, please give this video a thumbs up to help it circulate. And subscribe to the channel, consider it a tip. So grab a cocktail or two and settle down, because today we're gonna find out.
What happened?
How does John Taffer make his money? If you spend lots of time watching Bar Rescue, it's easy to assume that's John's primary hustle. But believe it or not, most of John's money comes from somewhere you might not expect. John doesn't make a profit from the bars he rescues. He receives a flat consulting fee and gets free promo for his other businesses, of course. So what's the deal? Is John's bar empire just a facade? Well, not exactly. He's actually made most of his money through various investments. In fact, he's actually something of a financial mogul. His biggest cash cow is his consulting firm, Taffer Dynamics, where he uses his psychological bar science to do the same thing he does on Bar Rescue. Turning the nightlife experience into a science seems to be a pattern for John. And he's also worked on technology for automated music selection in bars. Most notably maybe, John also created NFL Sunday Ticket, a program that helps broadcast all the NFL games, even the ones that aren't in your local network. And remember John's catchphrase, "You can't BS me, I wrote the book on it." Well, it turns out he's telling the truth. He has written 3 different books about everything from business advice to conflict management. John Taffer, truly a Renaissance man. How did John Taffer get famous? You don't get rich without making a few enemies, and John is no exception. Let's take a little-known story of how John got his start in the nightlife industry by taking out an entire team of coworkers. So, did John betray his fellow bartenders, or was he just being ethical? Okay, so John was just a 24-year-old college dropout, gigging as a bartender, hardly on his way to the Forbes list. Then a coworker pulled him aside with some shocking news. The entire staff was skimming $100 from the register each day. And to keep the numbers consistent, the guy said that John too would have to take his turn as a thief. So John went directly to the bar owner and told on his coworkers. The entire staff was fired, and John was very conveniently promoted to lead bartender. But while this was a pretty ruthless move from such a fresh-faced guy, John still had a soft spot. His first substantial business venture he went in on was a project with a friend. Well, it turns out that was a bad idea because John lost everything he put in it, which was $600,000 to be precise. After that day, John resolved to be much more particular about who he would partner with. But there's one partner he's gone all in on, and that's his wife, Nicole. So what's the truth behind John's mysterious spouse? Who is John Taffer's wife? You may have seen Nicole on Bar Rescue as a mystery shopper, but what does she do outside the show? And who is she really? And how did her appearance on the show end in a bloody fistfight? Well, very little is actually known about Nicole before she met John. The official story goes they met at the Super Bowl back in 1996. At the time, she was 23 years old and he was 42, but the age difference didn't seem to matter. The two don't have kids together, although John does have a daughter from a previous marriage. Once on the show, the owner of a featured bar decided to flirt with Nicole, a bad idea for many reasons. The guy claimed John reacted by attacking him, sending him to the hospital. But get this, according to the guy, the producers of the show told him to flirt with Nicole, knowing that the ensuing chaos would certainly create some very watchable TV. And so he ended up suing the company with unknown results. Today, Nicole seems to mostly just work for John's company, but the two must get along pretty well. John produced a spin-off of Bar Rescue called Marriage Rescue, in which he tries to save struggling spouses from marriage disaster. What controversial contests did he create? While the bars that John builds are obviously for adults only, Bar Rescue itself is pretty PG, but John's life hasn't always been so kid-friendly. In fact, when he was starting out in the industry, his management style was X-rated. In 1982, John ran a contest called Thanks for the Memories, a 10-week competition in which girls competed in an unknown activity, and the prize was a boob job, of course. Years later, while defending his saucy style, John inadvertently copped to another somewhat inappropriate business technique. He said, quote, I did midget tossing in Long Beach, California. We would throw midgets. So this was a different time. I would never suggest doing anything like that today. John's people have not responded to the questions about whether they're launching a spin-off entitled Midget Rescue, but I honestly wouldn't hold my breath. Because hey John, even in that other time of, the 80s, midget throwing was seriously not cool. Is John Taffer a fraud? John has gotten called out by some industry professionals for some unorthodox techniques, and claims he's shown off on the show. So is this true? Is John a bogus? Well, much of the criticism John has received has been over his expertise as a drink maker. For example, John once showed off how to make a Manhattan, except he didn't use vermouth, which is a big no-no to purists. In an interview, John claimed that tequila, mezcal, and mescaline are all related, and the article later retracted this point. So what about his work on Bar Rescue? What's happened to the dozens of struggling bars he's worked with over the years? Well, John worked with 214 bars over the course of the show. Of those, about 47% are actually still running. It's a tricky number. On one hand, that's quite a few failures with such an esteemed consultant. But on the other hand, many of these bars were pretty huge disasters going in. You know that if you've ever watched the show. So it would take a miracle to help them survive. So what do you think? Does John really know what he's talking about? Or are these criticisms just products of jealousy? John Taffer, a prime example of the kind of attitude you need to make it big in business. Sure, he's not the best at making friends, but who needs friends when you have so much money? Some will say John is a grifter, a self-promoter, or even a con man. And there may be a bit of truth to this. He's certainly not afraid to make enemies on his road to success. He did the whole Tim Allen rat thing. And if you don't know what we're talking about, we have an entire video about Tim Allen and his rat days. So get in the comments and tell us, what's the worst bar you remember seeing John rescue? Do you agree with his decisions, or is he a bit too arrogant? Do you like John Taffer, or are you more of a Gordon Ramsay and Kitchen Nightmares fan? Get in the comments and tell me all things John Taffer and all things Bar Rescue. Has anyone ever been to a bar that they saw on the show? I'm very interested in hearing these answers. Before you head to the exits and call a cab, please give this video a thumbs up to help it circulate.